would put him up there with the leader, Larry Jarrett. On the slow motion replay, Shelley, the machine darts around a little bit on the starting line.
And it looks like there's some ruts that are starting to form, too, so that makes steering extra difficult.
Against the time to beat of Larry Jarrett's 2.23-second #1 pass right now, 3.20 seconds, will only put Steve Sewell in the #8 position. So the Mudbuster heads back to the pits, and we'll be back with more championship mud racing and thrill show action from the Houston Astrodome in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, to the USHRA Association Thrill Show and Mud Racing Spectacular here at the Houston Astrodome, and we're ready to get underway with more action. The longtime mud racer from the state of Texas, Jerry Rogers, on the line. The mark to beat still 2.53 seconds by Oklahoma killer Larry Jarrett.
Just waiting for the okay to go.
Tremendous run! Absolutely phenomenal run for Jerry Rogers, and the Texas fans love that one. That may be good enough to take the #1 spot away from Larry Jarrett. And Shelley, that run looked like it was getting down around the low 2-second zone that a lot of drivers anticipated seeing here tonight.
Yeah, and just as he was coming off that, too, he started to get a little sideways. I got a little worried about him there.
I'm sure on the slow motion replay, we'll see that the left front wheel was never on the ground down near the finish line. Here's the pass. You can see him leaving the starting line and heading for the finish line all over the place.
Whoa.
Watch that left front wheel airborne as he gets sideways, then locks up the brakes when the kill switch automatically shuts down the engine. The elapsed time, 2.27 seconds, just 0.04 of a second behind our leader, Larry Jarrett, in the locomotion. Back on the starting line, Larry Kolikas with the outrageous Corvette, called outrageous. A 1982 Chevy Corvette, all fiberglass and aftermarket body panels of this machine. The 454 cubic inch big block Chevrolet, carbureted on methanol with nitrous oxide injection, Shelley.
And he isn't the only Corvette that's running this evening.
That's true. We still have Mike Ernie and the Incredible Mud Shark to go here at the Astrodome. The tires dig in, bouncing around on some of the ruts there, and it looked like the machine may have actually been knocked out of gear when it came down from that wild airborne jump at about the 70-foot marker. A wild, wild ride for the outrageous Corvette from Kenner, Louisiana. That's going to be an interesting shot on the slow motion replay. You can see the track crew out there talking with Larry, the 28-year-old behind the wheel of this home-built monster. Here's the slow motion replay. Now, you see the machine take a little bit of a left-hand turn off the starting line, but watch for the big bump. Yeah, bouncing all over the place there, and he still gets back into the throttle to make it across the finish line, but it certainly would have cost him in elapsed time. One of the most unique machines you could ever hope to see at a USHRA Association national event. Shelley Herman, take a look at this thing. An AMC Gremlin, the Maniac, here on the starting line. Without a doubt, one of the most unusual pieces of equipment you will ever see. Waiting for the signal to fire up and run. Jerry Richter and Ricky Richter. Brother team from Divo, Texas, and the 20-year-old now moves up and takes the starting line. One, a tremendous run! Unbelievable ride for the AMC Gremlin with Chevrolet motivation. Absolutely incredible pass. Shelley, I don't think anybody would have expected that machine to run that quick.
Well, certainly not me, but the fans sure were eating it up.
On the slow motion replay, a wild, wild launch. Airborne halfway through the pit. Airborne again at the finish line. Bouncing around through the shutdown area. The elapsed time, 3.08 seconds. Well off the current mark of 2.23 seconds, the time to beat. He'll finish at the #7 spot, at least for the time being. In the Lone Star State, mud racing knows several strong racers, but here is one of the best down south. This is Jim Allison from Bivens, Texas. A 44-year-old racer who's been doing this for many, many years. And Shelley, the Sandpacker, using a 509 cubic inch nitrous-injected Chevrolet, is a powerful ride.
Well, you know, it's such a contrast to see that short little Gremlin car and now this big long body, to see what kind of a difference it'll make for the driver and, you know, the machine.
Well, as opposed to the Gremlin of 2,900 pounds, this machine weighs about 2,500 pounds, 400 pounds lighter with an awful lot of power. Like I said, the 44-year-old logging contractor from Bivens, Texas, has been doing this a long time. He knows how to get down this track. A A great run, and actually heading over towards the side boundary, and it looked like Tollefson may have gotten out of the throttle to keep from going out of bounds on that run. It didn't sound like he got out of the throttle, but he was dangerously close to going off the race course. On the slow motion replay, you can see Tollefson going right into the ruts, whether intentionally or not, just skimming the mud, airborne near the finish line, and he's out of the ruts at that point and shuts it down right about the 90-foot marker. Well, Tollefson's sandpacker machine manages to record a 3.07 second elapsed time, and by 1/100th of a second, that'll put him in the 6th spot behind Jerry Richter's earlier 3:08. The flagman stands ready as the next machine gets ready to continue action here in the super modified category. On the starting line is one of the best in USHRA Association Super Modified Mud Racing, a member of a two-man team, both brothers, who have dominated action in the last 2 years. This is Bud Crum from Kansas City, Kansas, brother of Ken Crum, the man who's campaigned the spoiled brat Subaru in USHRA Association competition for so many years, with his 1986 Jeep CJ utilizing, believe it or not, a 410 cubic inch AMC engine. Shelley, there aren't many drivers who haven't switched to a Chevrolet or Ford engine in this sport.
Well, they're keeping it all in the family, too, because his son, Kevin, is also a racer.
That's true. Both Ken and a big fireball in the starting line, a little bit of a carburetor fire as well. And they're going to have to grab the fire extinguishers there on the side of the track. You can see event director Jim Harris and the other crews moving up, but obviously Bud takes care of it himself with the onboard fire extinguisher required by these machines in USHRA Association rules and regulations. What a rough way to go. It didn't look like a problem with the nitrous oxide system aiding the fire. It just looked like a carburetor backfire more than anything else. If it had been an intake valve hanging open, we would have seen a much larger explosion, Shelley. USHRA Association Mud Bog and Thrill Show Spectacular. We're still in the first round of super modified category mud racing. Shelley on the starting line is a guy who is well known in the championship USHRA Association Mud Racing Trail. This is Ken Crum, the other half of the Crum Brothers Mud Racing team. As a matter of fact, this is Ken Crum's vehicle with Kevin Crum, his son, doing the driving.
Well, we'll see if Dad does better than, if son does better than Dad tonight.
Indeed, the No Respect machine, the 1984 Jeep CJ7. And normally we see Ken Crum's spoiled brat Subaru. This machine, no supercharger, just a 454 Chevrolet, carburetors, gasoline, and nitrous oxide injection. You see the DOT street legal tires required on these machines, no taller than 44 inches high. Crum leaves the starting line, and something goes wrong. The machine falls out of gear. A lot of steam coming off the exhaust headers, and Crum's weekend has not been what they had hoped. That's 2 straight Crum family entries that have failed to make it to the finish line, Shelley. You know, everywhere we go in the USHRA Association Mud Racing Trail, the consistency of the mud and the type of the track is different because of the different soil around the country. Here in Houston, it's somewhat sandy, and you can see on the starting line on the slow motion replay of Crum's launch, the machine did have some tire spin to speak of, but then you can see Kevin looking down, and obviously the machine did fall out of gear. Something going way in the transmission. Shelley, this is a machine I've been waiting to see. You know, there's so much drag racing influence in USHRA Association mud racing nowadays. It's about time somebody built a 1923 T Ford altered. This one powered by a 428 cubic inch Cobra Jet Ford, carbureted with nitrous oxide injection. This is the stud from Metairie, Louisiana, of Mike Facina.
You take a good look at this.
Fire and smoke at the finish line as it looked like the machine had a backfire problem. I will tell you this much, it almost seemed like Facina's 1923 T Roadster was actually too low for this pit. He didn't have a very strong starting line launch, and the machine started to sink, even though this is a relatively shallow mud bog at 36 inches at its deepest point.
It looked like he was chugging along there towards the end.
The machine definitely could not get traction. Now, on the slow motion replay, you can see the starting line launch not exactly its best, but there you can see the chassis hitting the rut peaks underneath. That slowed Facina and the stud 23T Roadster down a bunch. Boy, he had a lot of problems with the ruts down at the finish line as well. Mike Facina's stud machine records a 4.11 second elapsed time. That'll keep him well out of the top 10. But if nothing else, like I said, there's so much drag racing influence in these machines now. A lot of these drivers going to the altered class. Well, from Richardson, Texas, here's Ray Henson, one of the oldest active drivers in USHRA Association competition. And old is not a disability in this sport. The more mud bogs you run, the more you know how to make them run. Now staged up on the line and waiting for the green flag. Ray Henson from Richardson, Texas, leads the line, almost out of the pit, sideways. He brings it back into the mud. And Henson is the first driver of this particular U.S.HRA Association national event to be disqualified for going out of the pit, but the crowd loved every minute of it.
What a wild ride.
Here's the replay. Watch this ride. All four wheels out of the pit at least one time. Now out of bounds, but he never gets out of the throttle. Stays in it, cuts back into the center of the track. Ray steers her straight and ends up pointing the right way. The elapsed time, although unofficial, 3.53 seconds. But like I said, we'll be getting a measurement of that run. Incredible chances are Jeep of Bubba Clements from Atlanta, Texas. Clements has only been involved in the U.S. Harvard Association National Event Tour for 2